guys, welcome back to my channel. So it's been a while since I've done any sort of like reading wrap up, and that's not exactly what this is going to be because I read a lot of books every month. September was a low month for me and I think I read 21 books. So I want to go through and basically just talk about the standout books that I read in the month of September, which is also going to be a feat in itself because I actually read a lot of 5-star books this month. So I'm just going to jump into it because this is probably going to be a long video. So I started the month off strong by reading A Curse in Ash by Julie Xantopoulos, who is Pages and Pens here on YouTube. I read an early copy of this for her, and as you guys are seeing this, it came out on October 5th, so you guys can get a copy of it now, and I'm so proud of her. Okay, this was a 5-star book. I started my month off incredibly well, and it was something that I was super nervous about reading just because I don't accept many review requests from friends because there is so much added pressure to review it honestly. Like, that's something that like everybody wants to make sure you're getting an honest review. You're not just getting like an amazing review because you're friends with them. But it puts so much pressure on like the reading experience because like you don't want to hurt your friends' feelings, but you also want to be honest about it and everything. When I tell you that I was so beyond thrilled to say that I fucking loved this book. I was so excited. So I didn't know much going into this. I kind of purposely didn't really talk to her much about what it was about. I knew it was kind of urban fantasy-ish, paranormal-ish, and I knew it was about fae, and that was about it. I kind of assumed there would be like witchy vibes in it just because I know her love of the Wicked Deep, but I was not anticipating how spicy this book was gonna be. It's adult, and it's incredible. This one follows Ashlyn, who is a witch who is living her best life. She's like a young 20-something who is starting to live on her own. She works as like kind of a private investigator with the police force to investigate like potential paranormal influence to crimes. And I was like, oh, my true crime junkie is coming out. And then there is a sexy Irishman who moves into town who is a musician, who I'm not going to spoil anything about the plot because it's something to just like go in and experience. But basically they have like a bond formed and they need to like learn how to live with it. And it's amazing because it has a lot to do with how she channels her powers and whatnot. And then there is also a sexy fae prince. So we're getting some like, not love triangle, but like potential multiple love interests. And I was here for it, just saying. I loved it. It was incredible. 5 stars. I was like so nervous to read it and I was so happy to be able to give it 5 stars. So I read that. Next, I ended up reading the Hades series by Tate James. This is like kind of a spin-off series from the Madison Kate series, which was my very first reverse harem series that I read a while ago. And I was basically waiting for Timber to release in the series because if you've read Tate James, you know that she likes to give you like gut-punching cliffhangers at the end of her books. So biggest piece of advice with Tate James, wait for her series to be complete before you start them because you will also binge read straight through them. Even though her books are like 400 to 800 pages, like they're pretty chunky books for romance, you are going to read through them in one sitting. And by that, I mean the entire series you will probably read like back to back to back to back within like a week. So I love this series. It was way darker than the Madison Kate series. It was way like heavier. It had really heavy themes and tones. I liked the men of the Madison Kate series better. I liked their relationship better. I am a Steel shipper, obviously, like as most people who love Steel, I like to shout it from the rooftops. But the men that we met in the Hades series they were pretty great. Big fan. I surprisingly ended up liking Gumdrop the most. And that's saying something for me because he is not my normal type, but he grew on me a lot, especially in book 4. So I'm not going to talk much about the series because I feel like honestly even talking about the main character is going to be a spoiler for the Madison Kate series. But just know it's fantastic. It's reverse harem. It's super fast paced. It's very heavy and dark. And our main character is the most kick-ass woman ever. Like I have such a lady boner for her. And it was great. Thoroughly enjoyed that series. Oh, I read Games We Play by Dana Isley, I don't know how to say her last name. This was a novella that was essentially picture like Corpse Husband, if you guys know Corpse. He does music. He's also like a gamer. internet personality. He's like one of the masked YouTubers. He's never revealed what he looks like, but he's got the voice. You know what I'm talking about. Basically, it's like him plus BDSM. And it was incredible. I loved it a lot. It's probably my favorite novella that I've ever read, so I gave that 5 stars. What else did I end up reading? I read Sweet Mercy with my book club that did shift over to Patreon, and I am thoroughly enjoying how it's going just because like we have like live chats going, everybody's like actually reading with me, and everybody's really excited. That was the first of the Dirty Empire series by K.A. Tucker, and if you are looking to get into slightly darker romance, more into like the crime family and mafia romance, but you're not really looking to get into like the nitty-gritty part of it, this is a very good introduction to it because I feel like it was very lighthearted. It wasn't very dark. There was not much like violence or anything in this series, or at least in book 1. And Gabriel is still the like dominating like alpha hole type of character that you tend to get in those. I liked it. I was a big fan of it. So that was what we read together. So that was exciting. Let's get into arcs that I read that I want to talk to you guys about. So first, I read Hook, Line, and Sinker by Tessa Bailey. This is the follow-up to It Happened One Summer. I love this book so much more. I might be in the minority of this. I have a feeling that people are going to like It Happened One Summer more just because like it had the Schitt's Creek vibe, it had the like Grump and Sunshine, the small town feels, which is all of the things. I loved that book too. Gave it 5 stars. Hook, Line, and Sinker just hit me in a weird, like, different emotional way. This one follows Piper's sister, and it follows Fox, who we met both of them in It Happened One Summer. These are my knees. These aren't my boobs. I'm just wearing shorts. But I loved Hook, Line, and Sinker. It was, like, slightly more emotional. It had a lot of good discussions about reputation for, like, all genders, and it just, I don't know. So Fox is just like my favorite little like emotional cinnamon roll character who plays off being like a playboy but has like a lot of feelings underneath, and I just attached myself to him so hard. He's basically known as like a player in the town, just sleeps around, and he's kind of adapted that into his own identity, that like he was told from a young age that he's an attractive dude and he's going to be a heartbreaker one day, and he's going to be the person that like parents are going to warn their daughters away from, and he kind of internalized that because that's all that he was told growing up. So he has this weird like complex about himself that he can never actually like commit in a relationship, and it was him working through all of that, and it was so good. I loved it so much. And there's like the whole music influence, and Hannah, who is our heroine in this book, I like super related to because she's very much like not the main character. Like she doesn't ever want to be in the spotlight. She always wants to be like a secondary character, and I was like, that's me. So I don't know why that book hit me so hard, but I loved it. Next arc that I read was Badlands by Stacey Marie Brown. I about peed my pants when I got approved for this because it was a very, very limited arc release. And when it dropped on my Kindle, I ran a lap around my house. It was very exciting. This is book 4 of the Savage Land series, which is the book that we're reading in my book club this month, by the way. If you wanted to get into that series, now is a good time because we're having a whole group discussion about it. So this, as you guys know, because I've been talking about it relentlessly, is one of my new favorite series of all time. Like, it's literally ACOTAR, Blood and Ash, Savage Lands. Right? Yeah, it's high praise. So I can't really talk about book 4 without any spoilers, but just know it was incredible. I gave it 5 stars. Also, gut-punching cliffhanger. And I read an arc of it, which means I'm even further out from satisfaction. So that's painful. Let's see. Next I also read the arc for Under the Whispering Door by T.J. Klune. That book was incredibly beautiful. It was not as sad as I was expecting it to be. And you guys might think that I'm heartless when I say this, because it's an entire book basically about death. It follows like a Scrooge type of character. He's just like a complete asshole in real life who dies and gets sent to this like tea house, which is kind of like a temporary holding place until you can like process what happened and move on to the afterlife. And it's kind of in the same fashion of House in the Cerulean Sea, where it's like this weird mismatch of like eccentric, bizarre, quirky characters that he meets at this tea house. And it's basically like him becoming a better person and processing death and grief. And obviously there's going to be a lot of trigger warnings revolving around death and like varieties of like suicides, how you process grieving and how everyone processes it differently, and it's a heavy, like dark theme story, but it doesn't feel that way. It feels very similar to other TJ Klune books where you were just like emotionally attached to these characters, and it's very like happy-go-lucky. I did tear up at certain points, but nothing like gut-wrenching like I was expecting it to be, but it was incredibly beautiful. So I gave that one 5 stars as well. Oh man, I'm just gonna keep talking about all of the books. So I read Unhinged by Onley James. This came off of a recommendation from Crystal, from Crystal's Bookish Life, and thank you so much, Crystal. She basically pitched this to me as like Wolfsong, but serial killers, and I was like, say no more. This is a male-male romance that basically, if you like true crime or serial killer stuff, oh, this is gonna so appeal to you. It basically follows, this is going to be an ongoing series. I think we have 3 books out as of right now, and I'm reading book 2 next. It basically follows this guy who is a doctor who essentially takes on children who have all of the makings to be serial killers. Like, the psychological evaluations that they've gone through have basically shown early signs of evil and craziness, and he has taken all of these sons in, it's all boys, and has basically like trained them and honed their powers to be like vigilantes, to take down all of the like cold cases that cops can't get enough evidence to solve, even though like we know that the person is guilty. This guy basically has trained like a little mini army of guys who have no like emotional capacity for like empathy or anything like that to go and clean up the messes, and it is so good. So this one is a romance between the one son and a victim of a past case that they dealt with. So it was so good. Like, these characters were so good. I loved it. This is one of my new favorite series. Speaking of new favorite series, I finally got into J.T. Gessinger. I started the Queens of Monsters series, and I'm dying for the next book. I have like a month to wait for it, but I read Ruthless Creatures and Carnal Urges. These are my new favorite romances of the year. Tossing it out there. I also have another one that I'm gonna bring up later on, but these are also mafia romances, but they don't feel as dark as other ones that I've read. Like, they're not nearly as broody as most of the alpha heroes are in mafia romances. Like, don't get me wrong, Cage is still very much like an alpha mob boss type of character, but they also like joke around and are like realistic, well-rounded characters. Oh, I loved it so much. So book 1 is basically introducing us into kind of like the Russian mob, and book 2 deals a little bit with the Irish mafia, and our heroes, they're everything. I love them. Cage and Declan, I adore them to pieces. What really made these 2 books for me, though, were Nat and Sloane, our 2 heroines from these stories. Sloane is probably my favorite heroine that I have ever read. I loved her so much. I have such a lady boner for both Natalie and Sloane, and I laughed through the entire thing. I cried with them. These are the best books that I've read in a really, really long time. So if you're gonna take any suggestions away from this video, Ruthless Creatures and Carnal Urges are gonna make my top list of the year. They are incredible. I loved them so much. Okay, and let's see. The last book that I've read other stuff mixed in with these, but the last book that I want to talk about is a book that I picked up just because I've seen it gaining some traction, and it seemed appealing to me because, as you guys know, I talked about the Madison Kate series. I have been getting into reverse harems recently, and I've been reading a bunch. Not many are stand out to me. This one is, and it's an incomplete series, and I'm dying. This one is the Witsec series, and the book 1 is called Find Me, and this is the only book that is out. And it is, when I describe it to you, it's not going to sound appealing, because honestly, if I describe it to myself, I'm like, ugh, that's not something I would want to read. But this basically follows a girl who is in like witness protection. Witness security is Witsec, and she has moved to this new town, goes to school, has these 4 brothers who live next door to her who basically like take her under their wing, and she basically becomes best friends with them and gets like absorbed into their little family, and it's eventually going to work its way into a reverse harem. I don't know how I feel about the brother aspect because that's weird and icky, but at the same time it doesn't feel that way when you're reading it. And also it's super, super slow burn. Like, nothing has even really happened as far as even book 1 goes. Like, we haven't even really approached the topic yet. But it basically is just a story of her kind of starting to live life and like start her life over in this new town. But also we are getting a lot of flashbacks of what happened to her and why she's in witness protection and how she is kind of trying to deal with that. Basically her entire family was murdered by her stalker. And she lost both her parents and her twin sister. And she basically just has like night terrors and constant flashbacks and is terrified, obviously, because her stalker is still out there. And she ends up getting taken in by her uncle because that's like her only living relative. And they end up moving like across the country, but he is actually working on this case, which believability is a little iffy there. But he is gone for a majority of the series, so she basically is having to like learn how to live on her own and not live in fear, and also befriend all of these hot, sexy men who live next door to her. So that description makes me go like, ugh, that sounds like not like a stereotypical like new adult series or something like that. The writing was so good. I haven't physically read a book in one sitting in a really, really long time. I couldn't put this book down. I started it at 11 o'clock at night because I'm stupid, and I finished it the next morning, and I only slept for like a couple hours. I literally woke up, rolled over, got my Kindle, and finished the entire book. It was so good. So, gonna recommend that one as well. All of these books that I'm talking about I'm recommending, but these were the best. That being said, I had a pretty great reading month. I read a lot more than that, but those were like the standout books for September. If you guys would like to hear like more in-depth thoughts about everything that I read throughout the month, that's what I'm basically doing over on Patreon. I'm doing like weekly reading updates and like whipping chats and whatnot. But that is a brief overview of the things that I have read this month. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys also had a stellar reading month, and I'll see you guys in my next video.